Hey, FlimsyLunchTray here, and welcome to a discussion around Helldivers 2, as today I want to give a unique, interesting perspective into what's happening with Helldivers 2 right now, from someone who's played the game a little bit. I've only had 6 or 7 videos featured here on the YouTube channel, but I play it a lot more behind the scenes, and I've, like my last video, which I'll tag at the end, I've had massive issues with GameGuard, so on and so forth. And if you're a World of Warships fan and following along here, then I would say you might be interested in listening to this video, because I'm going to draw some comparisons perhaps to WarGaming, the developer of World of Warships and World of Tanks, so on and so forth. So getting to the content of what this video is going to be about, basically I want to talk about why for some of us in the community we feel like Arrowhead has been really slow, the developer of Helldivers 2, to address kind of these massive issues they've been having in their game, and some that go as far as back as, for example, for myself in July, where myself and one of my friends was completely blocked out of playing Helldivers 2 due to the anti-cheat GameGuard. It's just, GameGuard is just trash. It's just an anti-cheat for a PvE game, which that's kind of interesting in and of itself, but I can talk more about that here shortly. And a lot of other people have been experiencing the same issue, and it's only been exacerbated and gotten worse, where essentially Helldivers 2, the performance of the game is just absolute garbage. Like, not absolute garbage, it's just awful right now. I mean, I'm now playing Helldivers 2 again. I think I figured out, and me and my friend figured out, that there was a program on both of our PCs, CCleaner. I think that for some reason it was that, or it may have been the World of Warships mod station that was triggering GameGuard on both of our PCs, is what we have come to our conclusion. And so I went to town and I cleaned out a bunch of programs as much as I could for my PC, just to see if that would allow me to start playing Helldivers 2 again. And I have been playing it again, but I just haven't been making any content on that. So there's just a whole fiasco going on with Helldivers 2 right now in the community, whether we're talking about the content creator Arrowhead, who has devoted an insane amount of time in his life to being a content creator and not being allowed to the proper propaganda commanders program. You have, and if you're not sure what propaganda commanders is from some of my Wilds audience, it'd be like the same thing. It's essentially a community contributor. It's a bridge between the community and the developers, publishers of the game. And then you also have Lieutenant Buzz Lightbeard, who is banned just because he wouldn't take a 7-second clip out of his video, which I don't think, did seem like perhaps Arrowhead fully understood what the ultimate point he was making in that. I'm not going to get into kind of all the drama with the propaganda commanders / community contributors. What I want to do in this video, and hopefully it won't take too long to talk about, is give a perspective into perhaps why it's taking Arrowhead so long to kind of address and just talk with us in the community of what the heck's going on. So Helldivers 2 was developed by Arrowhead Game Studios, and it's based out of Stockholm, Sweden. They were founded back in 2008, and their publisher for the game is Sony Active Entertainment. And so the driving force essentially behind Helldivers 2 is primarily Swedish, between whether it's most of their core development team, leadership, design, art, technical leads. It's essentially and primarily Swedish. So as a distinct Nordic game development culture, perhaps similar to some other studios like Coffee Stain. I think they've done Valheim and Goat Simulator. So Arrowhead is a Swedish studio, and Helldivers 2 is primarily a Swedish creation, if you will. Now, why does that matter? Why does that kind of get to this point of maybe why Arrowhead is taking really slow? So, kind of the unique perspective that I want to bring into this is the fact that I live in Scandinavia. I actually live in Norway. I'm an American who's lived in Norway for the last 5 years. And for me, I work in somewhat a rather larger organization here. And so I've been able to kind of learn the differences from being an American who's had, worked in different fields in the US to coming into Norway and then seeing more of how the structure in terms of whether it's the leadership, how do they handle major issues and problems and things like that. And it's definitely a different approach compared to the US, especially when you're talking about developing problems. Kind of a good example would be Scandinavians, they would engineer a safe bridge slowly, while we as Americans, we'd just start crossing the river while building the bridge. Right? So there's definitely a core difference there. And for me, I've been waiting, I've been checking in every day the last several days, the Helldivers 2 Discord and that, waiting for them to respond, which I'll talk about some of the comments that we have here from, if I can pull my Discord up in the background here, from Shams Georgiani. I think he's the CEO of Helldivers 2 Arrowhead, if I'm not mistaken. So I'll get to some recent things he said. But Scandinavian countries are basically Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Iceland. And so what I have noticed in the Scandinavian culture, in Norway, is that they're really slow in handling difficult matters, kind of maybe a public disaster, because they're taking so much time to work through in finding a solution. And so this is a kind of real cultural and a structural difference in terms of how Scandinavian societies operate. If I gave you the shortened version, then I can give you a little bit more lengthened version. Scandinavia, I would say they value the process of the system that they have in place. They really value stability among what they're doing, what they're working towards, and they're very much more trust-based culture compared to let's say in the US. So as a result of when you have these kind of more, whether it's a good positive decision or if it's now we're actually handling a really difficult situation, they're really slow about it. So they're really slow on decisions, and as a result, they tend to have fewer public disasters. You don't kind of see drama coming out of Scandinavia, right? If you just think about, watching the news. Where, for example, for myself as a US, we kind of value this this drive, if you will, of we take action, we want to create new things, we want to be innovative. And individually, we take a lot of initiative in what we do. So the result, what we have in the US, whether it's a good situation we're working on or it's a bad situation, you end up having faster decisions. But as a result, there's more of instability, there's more volatility, if I say that word right, as I'm learning Norwegian and it messes with my English words sometimes. But as a result, we often get more breakthroughs because of this initiative, this innovation, and this action that we're taking. So again, the example of Scandinavians engineer safe bridge slowly while Americans start crossing the river while building the bridge. And so I would argue this is probably what you're seeing happening. Well, we're not seeing it, but what's happening behind closed doors in Arrowhead, if they're competent and understanding this, right? So for example, to poke on poke fun of not poke fun of, but just talking about WarGaming, in the last several years, how many PR, public relation disasters, has WarGaming had? With a lack of not thinking things through, not processing things slowly, speaking before maybe wondering, hey, how might this sound? And also, Arrowhead, particularly with WarGaming, in WarGaming, you've seen how poorly they've treated many of their community contributors. You had this whole exodus among the community contributor program. There's a little bit of a small exodus happening now with the propaganda commanders in Helldivers 2. There's multiple of them who can't play the game. Imagine a community contributor of World of Warships who's making YouTube content and he can't play the game because it's impacting his PC. GameGuard's not allowing him to get in. The game's crashing so much when he's trying to record content or he's trying to live stream on his Twitch. You would just be losing so many people so fast in World of Warships. And that's essentially the same thing that's happened with propaganda commanders and other players in Helldivers 2 who just literally can't play the game. The game is too unstable. Having these massive performance issues and hard locking your PCs, and even some have had major component failures with, seems to be, playing Helldivers 2. There's enough facts there to make a case for that, where we have people who they could stream and do fine. They all knew equipment on Battlefield 6 and all this, but now as soon as they blow up Helldivers 2, something goes wrong with their PC, it hard locks, all these things. So there's a huge performance issue happening within Helldivers 2 right now. And so what I imagine after living in Norway for 5.5 years now is that you kind of have this very slow process happening behind closed doors. I hope. I really hope there is. So, you know, you could, like, let's say hit on like 4 things. As example, like usually in Scandinavia you have like this strong tradition of like consensus building, where if you're making a decision, it's not like the hierarchy in Norway, it's as an example, it's not like up and down, it's usually pretty flat, and like everyone's opinion matters. But as a result of that, it just takes longer for decisions, longer for action to take place, because they want to go and consult everyone, like the interest groups, maybe it's like political parties, public, experts, researchers, they want to get everyone involved, and then from there make a good decision. So like for us, or for me, it gives the appearance of like this very slow to act, compared to more like what I was saying, the up and down structural hierarchical systems. But the long term, or the goal is like long-term stability, and that they have broad support of the entire team for the final decision. So I view that there's this consensus and deliberation going on behind closed doors in Arrowhead. They probably want to talk with everyone, in staff, the developers, the leadership, the technical, and they're probably just trying to get all the eggs in the basket. Like, what's going on? What are maybe we're missing? Let's talk about this. So they're deliberating. They want to actually understand the problem, and then out of that, they also kind of, again, Scandinavians have a high value for trust. And so there's this sentiment here in Scandinavia that people accept a slower, more careful process. They view it as more worthwhile versus making a rash or like a very quick decision that could lead to potentially bigger problems, right? Or public disasters, or public relation disasters like WarGaming, right? If I throw WarGaming under the bus again. And it seems they've been doing a little bit better lately, but hey. So in the Scandinavian mindset, it's more of this like, hey, let's take a preventative approach, right? Like, we know that these kinds of things are prone to happen. Like, actually, I had a truck, I had a 2001 Dodge Ram, and so I would do what I could to take preventative measures versus waiting for something bad to happen with the truck, mechanically speaking, that might fail, or that I am aware of had the possibility of failing, right? So you take this form of preventable stability, and as a result, you tend to get fewer big mistakes, because everything's thought through. And when I say everything's thought through, like after living 5.5 years here in Scandinavia and Norway, like I'm saying everything's thought through, right? And it's so frustrating because you're like, let's just make a decision, and they're like, we're not ready yet. Or you thought a decision has been made, but like, no, we're still thinking about it, right? So that's that tension I have as an American, like working here in Scandinavia. And then I kind of spoiled on this earlier, it's this risk culture. Like, Scandinavians tend to be very risk averse in terms of their governance and their planning. They're very invested in safety nets, trusting the systems that they already have in place, having kind of a fuller scope of the analytics of how certain things are managed in that. So they're not very open as quickly to change. So it's this risk averse in governance and action. They want to avoid like the same of like tension. They don't really want to have tension. They'd rather have everyone be respected and felt well. And then if there's like tension, like they'll take an extra step, I would argue, away from the tension, or away from the issue problem, where compared to perhaps other, like American culture at least, that I could justifiably like kind of say here from experience. So when issues do arise, like, or a crisis does arise, they tend to be often less severe. But that's not what we're really seeing here right now with Helldivers 2 and with Arrowhead. And maybe there's some thoughts of kind of, do they even understand how severe and how bad the situation is? Like, that's kind of a question I have in my mind. Do they know how bad it is right now, right? I would argue it's not good. Not good. The last thing would be, I keep using the word systems. Systems is very important in Scandinavian culture. It gets into this bureaucracy culture and landscape you have here in Scandinavia, because typically like the people who are in place in these, having like, let's say, a strong administrative system, like a lot of the people that are placed in these positions and hired, like they tend to be very highly competent. And these administrative systems tend to be relatively corruption free. Like I can give you an example, in the city that I live and work around is Stavanger, Norway, and we had a mayor who was basically, I think technically they got kicked out of the party. They lost their position regardless because they had spent, I think it was the equivalent of about $5,000 on personal matters like flying, traveling, eating out, things that weren't actually relative to his or hers. I don't remember right now the exact details, but basically money that wasn't going to further the needs of the party, right? So basically they're like, no, you're gone. You got in trouble for $5,000, like 50,000 Norwegian kroner, something like that. And I'm like, and I'm an American, I'm like, looking at our politicians who just abuse the hell out of the money, and not being trustworthy and being like, you know, we have a decent degree of corruption in the US, right? So it's relatively corruption free in Scandinavia because these processes take time because they follow procedure very carefully, but they usually work. So I think that's a good summary of probably why Arrowhead is not very, like, I would say as an American, I'm like, why aren't they addressing things? Why aren't they being, making more public service announcements, right? Don't keep us hanging, say something, right? That's like the American meme, the Scandinavians like, no, we really need to make sure we understand everything and that we've thought all the details through. And seeing it from multiple different perspectives. if you're catching the tension of sometimes of me wrestling with like living, working in Norway, they really want to understand the full scope of things, and that just really means that things get and become much slower. Now, I think I'll try to put it on the screen here. There's been some recent comments from Shams Georgiani on the Helldivers 2 Discord. I caught these because of Cloud Plays. You can go check out his channel. Really cool stuff. But there was more that I wanted to hit on here from Shams that's been talked about in the Helldivers community. Then I'm going to wrap up the video. So what was really interesting is his recent comments as of yesterday. Yeah, I guess it would have been like late in the evening yesterday, North American time or something like that. Was like there was this comment on, you know, a guy was asking, is there no alternative to GameGuard? Like this service is immensely invasive and has a history of hefty performance impact on other games, which can exacerbate. Sorry, English is hard. I'm really learning a lot in Norwegian lately. Helldivers 2 are already very like severe issues, and it doesn't quite stop cheaters to still come across from time to time. I'm not saying don't use an anti-cheat, but I'm absolutely saying that in my opinion, the specific anti-cheat you folks decide to use for Arrowhead is likely doing far more harm than good. So which Shams responded, he said, I hear you, we're looking into it. Let's just get this patch out and then tackle this other Hydra head. So, I mean, there's a lot of focus on the next patch because it's already been delayed. But it's a little bit of kind of a delay tactic, like let's just get this patch out, let's focus on this and we'll get to GameGuard later, which honestly, it seems like maybe there's a shift here in his response in talking about GameGuard, because this comment was, what is even today's date? What is it, the 21st? So this comment was made on the 20th, and if I scroll down and I see him talking on the 16th, of October, there's a couple comments here where someone was saying people cheating rune sessions. All right, no, it's not. That's what he's responding to. Someone was complaining that there's no really point for an anti-cheat in a PvE game. I was hinting at this comment earlier. It's not like there's leaderboard or anything, so there's no concern. And so from that, Shams ends up responding to that to make sure I hear correctly. He says people cheating rune sessions for the other players. We get reports on this all the time. And then the other one that I found was even more interesting was that someone was asking, is there any news about GameGuard software? A kernel level software on the PvE game could be problematic. And to which Shams, again, this is 16th of October, he says, I've answered this a bajillion times. We see no evidence of it having performance impact. We will investigate more, or we'll investigate more, right? So it's a little bit of different feedback from, from the 16th to the 21st, where now they seem to be taking kind of a different posture here and saying, like, I hear you, we're looking into it. And so it seems like they are continuing to look into GameGuard. I am of the opinion, and it seems to be objectively true, that GameGuard is an issue for some people. Not for everybody, but there's increasingly so much more lately. I mean, even when your top propaganda commanders or your content creators can't even play the game because of GameGuard. So it seems to be a shift. I really hope that they are really looking into a different option than GameGuard, because it's just such a massive issue. And then the last, the most recent comment we have is someone, actually they made quite a long post, essentially saying that they didn't envy the folks over at the studio. They've been getting a lot of negative lately, and I've gone as far to avoid this specific Discord and sticking to low sodium for the last few weeks. I don't imagine this vibe is pleasant for the dev team. Let's hope things pick up soon. And so one of the point this person made was, I could perhaps bring up in their perspective, is that a lot of this negativity comes from a lack of communication and details. And so he actually gives like a pretty lengthy, good comment here, and talks about perhaps like the value of even, I believe, a roadmap. And so Shams responds, yes, yeah, I agree on the communication, and the video game Warframe is great. I feel we're slowly, emphasis on slowly, started to improve in comms cadence with a blog post, a video soon, another patch note video, and another blog post. If we can hit that cadence and keep it up, it'll be a lot better than what we've mustered in the past. Okay, but I would still argue, and I think CloudPlay's made a really good objective point, and I'm not trying to take anything, copy paste what CloudPlay says here, but it's still lacking. There still needs to be more, essentially, and I'll just, I'll actually tag the CloudPlays video to encourage you to go check him out, because I don't like to copy paste what other content creators do. But there seems to perhaps be some more of a different perspectives here of hey, let's actually look more into this issue with GameGuard. We recognize perhaps, yes, we're not being so good in getting communication out. I mean, they get communication out, but give us more. This is where the Scandinavian thing kicks back in again, but give us kind of more of a live feedback, what's going on, right now. What did you look at today, as a team when you got together? I think when you keep people in the dark, and I think this is one of the challenges that the Scandinavian culture has, is when you keep people in the dark and you don't really say exactly what's going on, when you're working in a global or an international setting, you tend to get more of a frustration from people who don't share that same Scandinavian, let's trust the system, let's go along with it. You tend to kind of lose out on those people, where they get very frustrated, right? So it's not like, Helldivers 2 is for a Scandinavian only community. It's the world is playing this game, right? So then there's kind of this whole other aspect of, are you being mindful of your audience, your community, your players, your people who are paying money to play this game, and people who paid money to play this game who can't play the game because of all the performance issues with your game? That's a big one to think about. So the Scandinavian approach doesn't do well and serve well for your global community. There has to be some form of actual consistent communication. You can't just kind of keep the community in the dark, well, we are going to get a patch out. Well, we're looking into the GameGuard issues. There needs to be something more. And I think, why we're not getting that is just because Arrowhead is a Scandinavian game developer. That, and as frustrating as that can be for maybe those of us in the broader global community who are kind of just dying to know, hey, what's going on? kind of lends this perspective that I wanted to add this voice into with the whole Helldivers 2 kind of I'll call it a PR disaster, you know, well, it's not just a PR disaster, so to speak. It's more of just like your game performance disaster, which has then turned into PR disaster, which was much more exacerbated as a PR disaster because of kicking a propaganda commander from community, and then just egging on a content creator, Arrowhead, for such a really long time, and just whoever was responsible for that really points to some very strong lack of what I would say that the Scandinavian trust aspect. It's very dishonoring to that kind of Scandinavian culture. So, you know, for the Swedes, perhaps there was a Swedish person who's kind of egging him on and not really addressing it, was like, it's kind of like, it's pretty low. I think I would say other Scandinavian people would probably very much look down onto that in terms of how Arrowhead has been treated, because I can tell you, like, I work with a fantastic staff overall. Majority are Norwegian. We have other international on our staff too, but you know, when we as a staff gone through bad times and good times, like, everyone tends to be very honoring of one another and respecting, like a very high respect, and even to those that we're serving, which, you know, you don't really seem to see that in the Arrowhead situation, or perhaps in this overstepping of boundaries and trying to dictate what your proper commanders can and can't say, like Lieutenant Buzz Lightyear, if I said his name right. So I've probably gone on much longer than I anticipated in this video, but I just hope it kind of gives some more perspectives and what could be going on behind the scenes. Arrowhead, you know, for me, as I got to thinking about it, I'm like, oh, like, I could totally see this being a big, not an issue, but just kind of how their approach, and maybe it helps some of you in the Helldivers 2 community to kind of be, give you more insight into the Scandinavian culture, and just perhaps help you with being patient, while Arrowhead is likely, I mean, they're wanting to work things through. You know, I think part of the thing I wonder, or I worry about, is, you know, there's been a lot of success with Helldivers 2, and they recently, of course, just released it to the Xbox community, and to not let the success and, you know, that kind of reaping the reward get to your head, where you just kind of turn a blind eye to what's actually happening in the community. And I think that's ultimately where it seems Arrowhead is really out of depth, in terms of, I think they had a third party hired to deal with the propaganda commanders or community contributors, and they didn't really seem to be aware of fully what was happening there. So that's definitely a problem. But hey, at least, you know, that you have people like the staff are involved, at least on the Discord, maybe the Reddit as well, with the community to an extent. So, but I hope the best. I love Helldivers 2, really like the game. But a lot of issues with the game right now, like, you know, when you kill a bug, like a charger, and then he's dead off, like, let's say 20 feet off to the right, and you walk where you killed him, and there's an invisible wall, it blocks your shots, it blocks your grenades. You throw a stratagem where a Bile Titan died, and it bounces back in your face, like, you know, I don't know, I can't remember if that one actually has happened to me, but just an invisible wall that just blocks what you're doing in the game, like, it's incredibly frustrating. And I've just avoided pretty much playing against the bots altogether, because that's when my PC acts up the most, when I'm playing bots. So I've just been sticking with bugs lately. So it seems to be that the more that's happening in the game at one given moment, that's really where I notice the game just starts freezing and just acting up. And I'm trying to be mindful, because I don't want anything to happen to my PC. So I've seen a lot of people who just decided that they're going to wait out to see if Arrowhead can fix these bugs. And I hope it's not a spaghetti code situation, because, you know, they fix something or they do something and then it's like they introduce a new bug. So I really hope they don't have the spaghetti coding issue that, like, WarGaming has, because it's like, it's legendary levels of spaghetti coding with WarGaming, particularly with World of Warships. I mean, it's crazy. So but hope the best for the Arrowhead studio, hope the best for the propaganda commanders, the best for us as players to be able to enjoy and play the game, because I think it's an incredibly good game. And I've told Arrowhead that with some of my feedback that I've submitted to them in their surveys. They have a really great game. but they've got some work cut out for them to do. So if you liked today's video, give a thumbs up. If you didn't, give a thumbs down. Subscribe if you do want to see more. If you're subscribed, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. I'll try to do a video specifically on what I did to make Helldivers 2 work on my PC. But I just basically, what I was understanding what was happening is that GameGuard was being triggered by another program on my PC, and then so I started hunting out potential programs that could be coming into conflict with GameGuard, because GameGuard is just way too intensive an anti-cheat. Like, it's just it's not needed here in Helldivers 2. We should really go with something else. So I hope you liked this video, and until next time, take care.